You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. You mentioned some of the information coming out overall in this community, and I also mentioned in the introduction that I believe that it's been somewhat infiltrated, especially within the past few years since 2020, when these types of independent platforms really started taking off. More people started listening to podcasts and independent media and getting their information from there because they started questioning more. But because of that, it seems to have attracted folks that are either plugged into the three-letter agencies or just want to muddy the waters or have some type of alternative agenda or just plain old stupid and bringing bad information onto the scene, which I see has become a bit of a problem lately with the oversaturation of information coming to us. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first on your last point there, I don't necessarily see a problem with the oversaturation of information. Clearly, that's going to be, I guess, weaponized to a degree. You know, like to just dump everything possible, like kind of like when you want a FOIA request and you get 4,000 boxes of paper documents. It's like there's a reason that's the way that happens, to make it impossible. But that is, I mean, there's problems there. But that's a much better reality than everything being so tightly controlled that we only have one voice to listen to, which is what they would prefer, right? And so I think it's a good thing to see more information than not. That's why I'm like, the more people, the better to get into this field. That's important. Jump in, say what you have to say. But you're right, though. And I think just to this current situation, I'm seeing this interesting situation, this flip. And it's funny, the timing of this. I was just thinking about this morning. We have like during the COVID-19 conversation, right? We saw a really interesting and very clear tribal divide, right? We saw lines being drawn in groupings that weren't necessarily always on the same side, right? You have people, that's what I tried to point out about COVID-19, the illusion therein, is that it wasn't bipartisan. Or it wasn't partisan. You had people on all walks of life and every angle of the conversation who generally were like, but wait a minute, I shouldn't be forced to take that. Or this thing says that's dangerous. Or masks don't work. You know, it's all over the place. And they really tried to make that MAGA, Trump, blah, 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 or the other side being the only ones that know and whatever. And so my point being, there was still nuance to it, but just again, taking just this last situation, because we can go further back, the shift into this Israel-Palestine conversation, but even Ukraine, by the way, but it's really stark to me right now. All of a sudden, you've got all these people that were like, it locked arms like Red Rover, like we're all just like, we're on the same side, we're not going to let this happen. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, you think Gaza civilians don't matter? Oh, wait a minute, hold on, we don't like each other all of a sudden. And everything just shifted. And I'm not saying from my perspective, I'm watching this play out. I'm trying to see solidarity in as much as I can. But it really shows us that the long story short, that there are people in this field that are here to, I guess, take advantage of what's happening and play the role of a certain kind of person in order to get people on a certain path. And that's my opinion. But I know, and you speak to intelligence, and I can't speak to which and how and where, but I agree with you. I think there's an obvious reality that's always been there of intelligence doing all they can to immerse themselves with the information sphere. We know that's the reality. We can't deny that. And of course, that means direct people in front of you on corporate media, right? Or people on social media or independent media. And that's important. But what I really think is interesting is that there are people that I think just have a different opinion when it comes to Israel, right? Whereas they might have thought we were on the same side. But like, I'm trying hard not to name anybody because I don't want to do that. But there's a lot of people out there that I think are, let's just take the Republican side of it, either being paid, influenced, or directed without their knowledge that they're being directed, and maybe they don't care, to play what they think Republicans look like, or what they want them to look like, or what they want us to be perceived as, right? And so you got these people out there making ridiculous claims that every now and again we seem to be on the same side about, like right now, it's like Israel's, whatever. But nonetheless, like the people that are going, blue roofs in Lahaina and all these different things that were like, well, I could always point out anything's possible, but we can't prove any of this. And I even proved that things were being altered to make the colors look a certain way. And they stand up and make these grandiose claims, and they act in ways that then they point at and say, that's what the independent media is. Here they all are calling for violence or doing the thing that we want to blame, on and on and on. So that's very fascinating to me because I think that's being used against us. But I don't think everybody's falling for it, and I don't think that it is connecting even with people that they're aiming it at. I hope, anyway.
How far do you think they can take the domestic terrorist angle legally, as far as any action against people that speak against the government, that have their own opinion, that have independent thought? You know what I'm talking about?
I laugh because, the thing is that, legally, if we pretend that they feel bound by the law, well, there would be an argument there that there is a only so far you can go. And I do, let me put it this way. Our government, or any government for that matter, is only bound by the law insofar as they think that the awareness that they're not bound by it might shift their power structure. You see what I'm saying? They don't care. And I think we've seen that in 1,000 ways. And so this is where it's even from my personal position, I've got family members that are worried for, hey, maybe you don't say that about the government, worried that somehow they're going to assassinate me or something. And that's certainly possible.
Yeah.
My point is, well, I don't think they're worried that that's going to somehow be a legal problem for them. I think that they're worried, if they were, that would cause more people to speak up, or cause a snowball effect, or that it would expose that they don't care. Even though they don't want people to know that. So I think that there's some level of security in, one, speaking out and not being a faceless person trying to expose things, because that's the best way to get yourself removed quietly when no one knows who you are. But I do genuinely think that they are not bound by the law. And I think they know that. And I think they're doing everything they can to let people like us know, or at least think that they would act if they wanted to, But again, I think that they are bound insofar as that we could use the awareness of that to stop them. And I think that's happening in a lot of foreign policy situations, right? I mean, look, the U.S. government's been acting belligerently, along with a lot of governments, for, you could argue, since its existence. But today, you've got this momentum of people that are either caring about human rights, which I hope that's what it is in the majority, or just people who see a political benefit, that it's advantageous to them in the moment to play the person that cares about human rights. And that, to me, is usually where most political people are. Not really about what matters, but how, okay, I'm going to be the first one to jump out and be like, actually, I do care about Gazan citizens, because they can tell that the shifting narrative, the Overton window's been broken on this conversation, and they're losing control. Mark my words, you're going to have prominent people that suddenly just try to shift their narrative because they think it'll give them, and it probably will, give them political support.
I want to get into the possibilities of COVID in the future and the agenda surrounding this. It seems like they put a lot of time and effort and energy into everything that went into the operation beforehand to just let everything slip away as far as a future pandemic or some future COVID version. Do we see this as an inevitable future, that this is going to be brought back up in our reality?
You like the medical COVID-19 lockdown, that kind of stuff?
Yes.
For new stuff coming forward. Generally, yes. I think it's highly unlikely that we're not going to see some form of that come back. I mean, in many ways it already is. But what's really fascinating right now, in a very macabre way because of the circumstances, is how it's almost already shifted in very dramatic ways. But even the Ukraine war, which is really interesting. I'll talk about this today. On a dime, they're like, oh, well, we're only looking over here. Nobody talks about Ukraine. Even they're already apparently removing very important deployments, in naval, speaking specifically in the naval sense, but in other ways, from the Ukraine situation, which in any kind of geopolitical military perspective is them backing away from their engagement with Ukraine's war. And it's on a dime. 30 seconds ago, it was the only thing we should care about. And if we don't, we're all killing the world. And then, but now we care more about this. I know people can see how stupid that is. How it means they actually didn't think this was that important, or at the very least, they are showing you that this is so important to them that they're willing to drop the thing they told you was the most important thing in the world. It's really embarrassing.